Welcome back to the Southern Utah Hockey Report. Gabe Goche here, Tommy Rupp, episode 12. Man, I'm stoked. We have a lot of awesome stuff. We came off that interview with UNLV, Nick Rabone, talked about that amazing story, just his resilience of, being shot during the concert that October 1st, 2017, and then coming back and coaching what they've done with UNLV program. Awesome stuff, Tommy. And then, of course, our good buddy, Trevor Lewis, playing in his 1,000th NHL game. I shot him a text just to, congratulate him. So it doesn't happen very often that guys play 1,000 NHL games. So he's definitely one amongst a small few. So you got to grow up with Louis, Trevor. And so did you give him a little message too?
Oh yeah, no, actually, I did a little post for him on Instagram, just a little story shout out or whatever, and he was fortunate. He reposted it, which is super cool. Like I always hate reaching out, especially during the season. I mean, obviously they're trying to make a playoff push right now, and the last person he probably wants to talk to is some bum like me from Utah. But
Yeah.
that being said, I mean, like you said, I mean, huge congratulations of all the players in the NHL. I believe I looked this up, so this is off the top of my head. If I don't remember it exactly correct, don't hate me for that. But to get into the NHL, it's extremely difficult. To stay in the NHL, it's even harder. There have been less than 500 players, I believe, in the NHL that have played 1,000 games. And if you look at the magnitude of Trevor and what he brought to the state of Utah, just him making the NHL was enough success for our state to rally around what he did. But now you look at something where you're playing 1,000 games. Now, obviously, he's got two Stanley Cups. I will die on this hill. I don't think the Utah Hockey Club exists if Trevor didn't do what he did for this state. And I know he went about it the non-traditional route now, as far as moving out when you're super young, everything like that. Like, I mean, he used to share stories with me where he was terrified to come out of his room with his first host parents because he's 14 years old. And if you can remember back when you're 14 years old, you're living in a different state, you're
Yeah.
away from your parents, you've moved into this billet house that you do not know these individuals or anything like that. And really, what was cool about it, even though it was so daunting for him, is his hockey was his release for that. So I was very fortunate enough to watch that from a player's perspective, get to play alongside of him, whether that was in drop-ins or anything like that. And then obviously, like he dated my sister for a long time, so
Right.
he was a part of our family as well. So it was really cool to watch him go up through the progression of the USHL, the Des Moines Buccaneers, going up to the OHL with the Owen Sound Attack. Getting drafted. I believe it was 17th overall. Like he was drafted in front of Claude Giroux.
Yeah. So we'll get it. I love it. Like this is why I love doing this, right? Because we just get
Yeah,
into talk. So there's it looks like 400. He might be either the three because Wikipedia. Well, one Wikipedia,
sure.
but they have 398 players that have played 1,000 or more NHL games. Okay, so Louis would be probably 399 or 400. Um, Other guys that are like just close at that thousand game mark, right? Steve Staios played over 1,000, like just over 1,000 games. Thomas Paklanik, another just right over 1,000. Andrew Ladd, Ryan Kessler. So like those are guys that are just recent that have played over 1,000 games. And like you said, just the list of players, but with that too is what he's done for the game, right? And being that pioneering player. And I was in Southern California, but this is where we've talked about the path, and we have an interview with George Chalos that we're going to be releasing tomorrow, which we just got done talking to George, which was an amazing interview. And he talks about that path of everyone has a different path, and mine was California to Massachusetts to Canada to then Colorado for college, then pro, where Louis, like you said, is Utah, Colorado, then going to play junior somewhere else and then going to play Owen Sound and then going pro, like completely different path. But for you and me, we also came together because of hockey. Like you said, Louis dated your sister Angie, and my wife Tammy was friends with Angie because we played together in Manchester. And then fast forward 20 years, it's like, hey, by the way, those are the things. But that's the cool thing I love about the sport, and George talked about it too, and just how Utah is starting to pick up that hockey atmosphere. And you grew up in the Salt Lake area and now down in St. George. The biggest thing for you and for me and for Corey, Doug, like all of us that are pioneering the game here in the Southwest is education, right? And
Right.
giving people the right education. And that's again why we're here, why I'm here is to do that. And we'll talk about many different paths. And that's why we started the Southern Utah Hockey Report, why I started G28 Athletics, because you also had a completely different path than Trevor and I. So let's talk about that real quick. Is just the path for kids right now in Utah, like what's realistic, but then what it can be. And I feel right now it's still the realistic is what you've gone through is, hey, you play through your Murray High School and then you go play some junior and then kind of get a look from there. Like, is that what you're seeing, Tommy?
I mean, it's definitely what I've seen lately. Like it's a double-edged sword. So this is something that I'm very passionate about, and this is exactly why I share this podcast with you. Obviously, you doing the heavy lifting of it, and me being able to contribute it to it, which is I'm very grateful for. But like, I remember having conversations with family members. I was actually at a mortgage job after I got back from juniors. I found out that I was related to one of the executive leaders of the company, and he had a son that was in hockey in Utah.
Yeah.
And he wanted his son to get better. And he's like, hey, obviously, hey, we're related. We've been going to Christmas parties for all these years without knowing each other, but I want my son to get better and I want you to teach him how to do it. Right. And it was something that when I went and I taught his son how to skate, how to do the hockey drills, the more in depth ones, just a step further than learn to play kind of things. It was a little bit more advanced that way. And I remember him coming up to me one day and he goes, "Okay, how do I get my son to the next level?"
Yeah.
And I had to have the hard conversation with him that it's like, if you want your son to go, you got to get him out of here. And I remember him just looking at me dumbfounded. He's like, what are you talking about? We have all these good youth programs. We have all these good youth players. We have rinks within any 15-minute direction that you drive, north, south, east, west, doesn't matter. You're telling me I now have to move my kid to a different state for him to even get a look? And unfortunately, the answer was yes. And I remember he even looked at me after that and he goes, "You know what, Tommy? I don't think that's the case. And even if it is the case right now, I'm going to do something about that." Now, he's gone on to manage a lot of different hockey teams. I believe he is or was currently the manager of the Ogden Junior Mustangs, their double A team.
Okay.
And it's been 10 years since I've had that conversation with him. And now, if he was to ask me that today, I have a completely different answer. And that just goes to show you that the expansion of hockey, the growth of hockey. And you know what? I mean, even though Utah is this new kind of pioneer like state, I mean, I remember growing up playing in California as a kid, which is where you're from. And we used to play the North Cal Junior Sharks,
Yeah.
and they were the best team in the Southwest League at the time. And there was a lot of California teams in that league. And I remember the one time my dad was talking to one of the parents, and they're like, "Yeah, we drive 2.5 hours north to get on the best hockey program." And when they were having their tryouts, they would have 200 kids show up to make a roster of 18.
Yeah.
And in Utah, we barely had enough players to even fill a team. Like we would have two good lines, and then your third line was kind of like, okay, like, they, they still made enough of the grade to the point where they can play. But going back to my story with my family member here, to know that 10 years later is how quickly something like that has changed. And like we were talking to George about, that like if you're good enough, people will find you. And Utah is now a state that people are going to want to come to. It's an untapped market, which means you're going to get more exposure. Well, if you're going to get more exposure, that means you're going to get more playing time. If it's even more untapped, you're going to get more publicity. And if you look at the online tools that these players have now with recording themselves, even if it's shooting drills in the garage, or even if it's on ice sessions during practice for their junior A team, or maybe it's their college team, anything like that, or even the AAA team, someone's going to be able to find that media and take a chance on somebody.
Yeah.
So 10 years is all that it took to change the narrative 180 degrees. And I think it's because of good people in the game and shedding light on the game and how we can not only develop, and inform these kids growing up, but like there's more life lessons in hockey than people think. I was a good hockey player for sure, and I'm very thankful for that. But I'm even more proud of the fact that it made me a good employee of my company. It
Mm-hmm.
made me a good husband. It makes me an even better father. And it makes me an even better community leader. And without hockey, I mean, for lack of a better term, I wouldn't have a religion in my life that I could rest on my laurels, that I look at that and I go, this thing brings me so much joy. And to see how much difference and change it can make in such a short period of time, I
Mm-hmm.
think that speaks for itself there. And Utah is at the forefront of that.
Oh, for sure. For sure. The whole Western landscape. And that's why I just keep smiling, because like when you were talking about playing in the Southwest Hockey League, well, that league was formed by Ron White and what one of a couple other guys, but he was my coach in Bantam. So I started the Southwest Hockey League. I was actually one of the leading scorers of the Southwest Hockey League one year. So my parent, I think my parents still have that trophy. But it was like, I don't know. I don't even know the points. I don't want to get into something crazy, but it was over 150 points in the year is what I had.
What team did you play for?
It was the South Coast Sabres.
I knew it. I knew it was going to be South Coast. Of all those freaking teams, dude, like, I will tell you this. Like, it is good to be hard to play against.
Yeah.
South Coast, they are still in my nightmares to this day. And obviously, you grew up in a hockey environment where there's so much skill around you, whether it's like, like there was a team out of Anaheim at the dying years of the Southwest League and everything like that. But I'm not joking. Like
Yeah.
Valencia Express was in that. Like I said, the NorCal Sharks.
Yeah.
Um,
There was
yeah,
like the Phoenix Junior Roadrunners,
yep, dude. And they
Idaho
were
Steelheads.
insane. Yeah.
Yep. And
Well, and
then,
even before the Roadrunners too, they had the Firebirds, man. When we would
yeah.
have to go play the Firebirds,
Yep.
like they would run your face through a wall. You're like, oh my goodness, I do not want to play against this team anymore. That's so funny. You play for South Coast, dude. That's
Yeah.
so funny.
And the funny thing is, like, I don't know if you know this guy or not, but the thing we remember about Utah is when we played Utah, there was one guy that had three numbers on his jersey. It was 111. And we're like, who is this guy? Like, what a meathead. Like, he always has it, like, what do you have to be different and have three numbers? It was, and that we remember specifically, it was Utah only that this kid had three numbers. And then the next year, then there was another kid that had three numbers. And we're like, this is ridiculous. Like, come on, like get rid of the three numbers. So, but that's what we remember is the three numbers. But then there was another story, is because I was also playing roller hockey at the time, and that's when roller hockey was really starting to kind of make its way in as a sport, but like we always talk about barrier of entry. It was tough to get roller hockey to merge with ice hockey and all that stuff. But I was playing both, right? So ice was my main course, and roller was my dessert, is how I put it. And so I remember we were in Utah, and it was Bantam hockey, but we were South Coast. We were playing Team Utah, and me and Chris White, Ron's son, were just kind of screwing off in the room. Like, we were good, so we knew it was going to be a good game in our favor, right? So
Right.
we were a little light. We were just a little lighter. Well, Ron didn't think we were ready enough, right? So he gives the whole team this time limit. You guys have got to be dressed in 5 minutes. And we're like, okay, come on, Ron. Like there's still the Zamboni's still on the ice and all that stuff, right? So he comes in 5 minutes and me and Chris are not dressed because it also takes us 5 minutes to get dressed.
Right.
So he loses his mind and he takes the key and like you have the old wooden stick, right?
Oh yeah.
A hole in it. And he takes the key and he whips that thing across the room. He's like, you roller daddy, stop screwing around and get dressed. This is an ice hockey game. Like obviously he had different words, but it was funny because that was here in Utah as a kid with the South Coast Sabres.
That's so awesome. Do you remember what rink you played in?
Honestly, my parents would know. Like, if they're listening, so they can put in the comments what rink that is. So if they can remember that too. But I remember we came up here. There was from my memory, there was glass. The windows on one end, like we could see mountains from the ice.
Oh, okay. Oof. Well, what year were you in Bantams?
Well, I was also playing up. So
right.
90, probably 96, 97.
Okay. So 96. I mean, we're talking, I don't think we had Murray at that point because we built all these rinks it had to have been a court ice arena. If you had windows and you could see out on it, did it have a big eagle on a brick wall? No, that was later on. Anyway,
I don't know if my parents can remember, like I'll have them. But yeah, I remember that though.
No, it had to be Cottonwood. If you saw mountains out of glass, for sure, it had to have been Cottonwood. Super small locker rooms, like the showers were garbage. You know, most of the
old. That was the time where like that was when showering was just starting. Like you would just right. You know, you'd have some guys that would still wear their boxers or
yeah. I'll never forget that, man. You know, my buddy Jesse Stone, I remember walking out of Pee-wee's one day. He's like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you got to get showered. You're just going to go out there stinking. It's like, oh, I didn't know we did that kind of thing, you know, or whatever. But hey, that's the rite of the passage. And that's what makes the locker room atmosphere fun. But dude, it had to have been Cottonwood. I would actually bet my paycheck on that. So if you guys can comment, if your parents can comment, I would love to hear it because that's like pre-big Utah hockey. Like that was the olden days, and I'm surprised we could even afford to host one of the weekends for the Southwest League because normally we were always traveling to California or Vegas or anything like that. So,
but no, that was the pioneering was the Southwest Hockey League, and I think they may even start to rekindle that in light of the Utah Hockey Club because this is where like George talked about like the East Coast versus the West Coast, right? Is we have a lot of the NHL programs are starting their youth programs, and it's about having a presence in the community, having a presence on the ice. Before we get to that, though, we got off track, but that's totally fine, and we always get off track. You know, as we're getting into the recognition with Trevor Lewis, we can't forget about Team USA and the World Juniors. They again come back to back with the gold medal, this time on Canadian soil. Boom, kick to the teeth. I also posted a video too of Canada's new strategy. Former Prime Minister Trudeau, I guess, had a problem with the water bottles. So
easiest thing to overlook, Gabe. Easiest thing to overlook. The water bottles are
yeah. So, but hey, congratulations to Team USA. David Carl, another good buddy of mine, shot him a text as well too. It'll be some time until we get him on the podcast because he's obviously focused. He wouldn't be where he is if he wasn't locked in, and I know that too. So I just said, hey, just want to put it in your ear, maybe for the spring or summer, but stay the course, stay locked in, because he's got some heavy hardware and he's still young too. And I like, cause you're a huge statistician, man. Like for him, like just talk about what you've seen David Carl accomplish in just a short time as being a coach.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you this, and this is from the outside looking in. I think the biggest thing that is gasoline in his engine is he had an ailment where he couldn't go on and play.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He had a heart condition that ultimately forced him to retire. Some of the best hockey players that are out there never got to play the game at the high level because of these types of ailments, or maybe they didn't have the opportunity. You see a lot of those guys or girls come back into hockey to leave something behind that they knew they had to give, but the world gave them a not a fair shake necessarily. So speaking to that a little bit more, I think number one, his biggest thing is just drive, right? It's
Yeah.
success. It's there's only, you're either first or you're last kind of mentality. And I think that's propelled him to a lot of success. And you do look at the resume, like you said, obviously we're talking a national championship as an assistant coach to Jim Montgomery here at Denver University, but also a national championship as a head coach. And then you look at 2 World Junior gold medals, and he's my age.
Yeah.
So the fact
He's
that he's out there doing that, I think it
breaking
speaks
30.
to a lot of his drive. Yeah, exactly. I think it speaks to a lot of his drive and what he does to develop players. I also think there's an interesting bit of news, and that was just announced today. He will not be back as the USA head coach for the World Juniors. And I am very tuned in to the NHL world. I like to see moves coming before they happen. Dave Carl has even come out and said that he would not go to the NHL unless someone made it worth his while. There's a lot of teams out there right now that will make it worth his while. You're talking the Buffalo Sabres. I would even say the New York Rangers could potentially use him. Anaheim Ducks would be a great spot where you've got all that young talent that's coming up, everything like that. But you're probably going to have to give him a 5-year deal at
I was
somewhere like 3 million a year, 4 million a year, something like that.
so
I mean, it's a steep pocket, but it's certainly worth the price point.
yeah, I was gonna say that too because there's there's been a lot of and it's not just hockey, it's also like football is making that shift from college to pro. It's not an easy shift
Right.
because the it's the same as a player. The margin for error is so small. Like when you're in the NHL, and we've talked about it with Vegas and other franchises, the turnaround with some of these coaches, it's 1 or 2 years. Whereas college and coming from and Gwozdecki coaching at Denver for 20 plus years, it's a career. It's a career for that institution. And like you mentioned with DC, it's got to be a good deal. So like when we talk about what does a good deal look like, it's not just financial,
Sure.
but it's also longevity because the university is that longevity. Like they're not looking for that complete turnover. They want to build a program. So the longer they have someone to build that program, then the more successful they are. Where an NHL or pro game is completely different. But we've seen Dean just from me. I've seen Dean Blaze for the University of North Dakota, Dave Hackstall from the
Right.
University of North Dakota. Okay, Brad Berry from the University of North Dakota. Gwozdecki was given an opportunity with Tampa Bay. So he went from Denver to Tampa Bay. Talked to him. He wasn't a fan because it was just a different type of coaching. Uh, Other coaches that have gone from college to pro, that it's a small amount of guys that do it. But like you said with David, it's got to be worth that longevity. So you talked about a 3-5 year deal. I would imagine it's the same. Like someone out there is probably looking at him and saying, look, we want to put you as our franchise leader. We want to build the franchise around you, and then you build that team. Like, is that what you're thinking too?
Well, I think not only that, obviously the strong point of Carl's game is he's going to be able to develop your younger players quicker, right?
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, like if you look at winning a couple national championships and 2 World Junior golds, well, now it's how much easier is it for DU to recruit? A lot easier, right?
right.
Because they're like, hey, whatever this guy's doing, he's turning out championships, and championships mean jobs, right? So we look at the
Yeah.
NHL game getting younger and younger, but yet the disparity of skill versus hockey sense, and I think a lot of the old school mentality is They don't want to turn the trust over to the younger guys quite yet in the organization because they can't get through to them. But also, how are you going to put a guy like Jack Hughes in a box? How are you going to put a guy like Trevor Zegras in a box? You're even seeing that in Anaheim right now. The minute that someone comes in and says you can't be fancy, all of a sudden Trevor Zegras' game has been condensed to something that's quite minimal. And I feel bad for him. I almost want him to get out of there and just be able to breathe a little bit. But coming back to Carl, I think the one thing that all the players are going to resonate with, and I do think that's the key indicator of success as a coach in the NHL level, if they're going to gain your trust, they want to know that you've at least been there before or you've played at every level.
Mm-hmm.
So they know that you understand what's going through their brains. That's the biggest value as a player. Even when you and I were playing, a coach isn't going to come in every single day and give you a pat on the back for what he's expecting you to do or what she's expecting you to do, right? If anything, they're going to come in every single day and give you a kick in the butt going, here's what you're not doing. Here's what you're not doing. And you need a little bit of that in life, don't get me wrong, but also you need a lot of that. Just at least level with me and let me know that you understand the level that I'm coming from. Well, if Dave Carl playing as long as he did and not being able to make it, that level of hunger is going to be there to a point that he is going to level with you. I think you see that in all of his players at the University of Denver, and you see that at the National Development Program as well. He's going to level with you. He's going to know when to give you a kick in the butt, but he's also going to know when to come in and give you a little bit of a hug, or at least just like, hey, I know you're going through it right now. I've gone through it myself, and I know you want to be the best that you can be. You wouldn't show up and dedicate your life to this sport if you weren't here for the right reasons. I'm here to acknowledge that, and I'm here to let you know that it's okay to have those feelings, and let's turn that negative into something that's positive so we can all succeed. And I think that's what's going to set him apart as an NHL coach. It's not a Craig Berube in Toronto where he's yelling in your face and throwing water bottles and breaking sticks to get you fired up. But he's also not Martin St. Louis where he's constantly leveling with the player. It may lack a little bit of that fire. It's the perfect balance coming in. You give him the longevity, you give him the security. Before you know it, he's going to have some positive effects in your locker room. That's going to translate to the ice. That's going to translate to playoffs. More playoffs equal more Stanley Cup opportunities.
Definitely, for sure too. And it's the player treatment. And you talked about like Zegras and just how certain players really are, they're just hard to coach or hard to manage just because of their persona, right? And some call it arrogance, some call it cocky, whatever, but just some are just difficult to coach. And you need to find that right gel or mold. But the thing about the college coaches, and I think that DC David is really good at, is being able to get onto the level of those players. And then getting into the pro game, you're not only dealing with the players' egos and their mentality, you also have to deal with the advisors and their agents, right? So that there's a different, that's why we say there's a different game for college and pro. So in college, you are dealing with agents, but you're not dealing with every player having an agent. Where a college team in Denver right now, I think there's 11 draft picks, right? So that's 11 agents, or some guys have the same agent that he is dealing with every once in a while. Where in the pro game, it's every day. And it's a new agent for the most part, right? And it's not just American, it's North American, it's European agents. But I feel with his persona, not only dealing with the kids at major or the World Juniors, also with college, he's now going to be able, and like you talked about, get the kids at a young age to start developing a franchise. And I think that's what maybe some NHL programs are looking at to say, all right, hey, we want you to come in. Here's our draft list, or here's our futures list. We want to start building them up. What do we need to do there? Let's take care of this NHL team. Set your team, but we're going to give you 5 years to do it. And then, when you reach that 5 years, then we'll talk about extension. So it'll be curious, man. It'll definitely be curious. We'll stay up to date with that. I know you are staying up to date. So obviously follow our Twitter or X, and then our Instagram and all that stuff as well too. So Tommy can provide those updates. But as we talk about advisors, and it goes into our interview with George Chalos too, of just the different paths. especially here in Utah, there's different avenues, and we go back to our different paths. Right now in Utah, there's, I'm going to say, limited opportunities. Okay.
Sure.
And that's why we want to provide as much information as possible, because there's opportunities out there. But as we talk to George, we also, have our podcast continue. There's a right path, there's a wrong path, and then you sit there and question yourself. You're like, well, which one's right for me? Well, that's why we're here. Okay, Tommy, myself, also why I started G28 Athletics is not only for on ice instruction, but it's also for off ice advisor,
Right.
and helping families. And as we link up with Tommy again, this is why teams work so well, right? Tommy's very analytical, very in tune with that game, and then I come from the the former player, and also the hard knocks, right? I had to learn from experience. My parents had to learn from experience, and those experience, even though they were sacrifices for us, are now benefactors for you. And we want to turn those benefactors into your success as a parent, as a player. And that's why we're going to continue to bring on new families, new players, to advise them on the next steps. Because, like we talked about, Tommy, you came from Salt Lake, you had to go play junior in the Midwest, and then you get to a stage in your career. It's like, well, what's next, right? And that's what we want to answer for a lot of kids coming out of Utah. So let's go back to you and talking about the coming off Murray High School, you then go play junior. So, like, what could you have done knowing what you know now?
Well, I think the biggest thing, like if my current self was to go back and talk to my 16-year-old self, I really wish someone would have educated me on the business of hockey. And what I mean by that, because there's going to be a lot of people that think, okay, well, my kid's playing on, U18 AAA at the age of 15. What do you mean business? Well, every hockey team is a business. I mean, that's plain and simple what it is. And trust me, there's a million things you can do with this sport. There's, like, I always tell kids, follow your dreams, everything like that. But without understanding the business aspect of it, you kind of have this false hope that everyone's carrying the same morality that you are. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that to say that my morality is correct or someone else's is incorrect. What I'm saying by that is everyone has their own vested interest in whatever it is that this unit goes, right? And like for my junior career, the only reason that I even had an opportunity in junior A hockey was because one of my coaches picked up the phone. That's it. I
Yep.
played for Ricard Gronbrock. I believe I'm saying that correctly. I played U18 AAA at the age of 16. Um, he went on to coach the Swedish Olympic team to a gold medal. Okay, so Henrik Lundqvist was his goalie.
That's amazing.
Like, I will tell you this, Ricard and I didn't get along very well. There wasn't a lot of opportunity under his umbrella. He was looking to get to the next level, and I don't slight any coach trying to use opportunities to get to the next level. That's what we're all here to do in the stage of hockey. And there was a lot of that I took to heart, and I took it really hard. I know it was difficult years for my parents dealing with my emotional outbursts because of it. I did not prepare as well as I should have. That's completely on me. I don't blame anyone else for that. And even though Ricard and I didn't see eye to eye, none of this is his fault either. It's just the way that he wanted to go with his business venture versus what I thought a U18 AAA coach would provide at that time.
Right.
And after I took the summer off, I wasn't even going to play anymore. I was kind of like that upset by it. I go play double A, U18, one of the funnest years of my life. And even though the coach was probably not the best resume or overall anything like that, he took the time to pick up the phone. And because he picked up the phone, it got me an opportunity. And I made the most out of that opportunity. I'm very thankful for that. I just wish my younger self would have known that, hey, sometimes people are not in this just for your individual growth. Sometimes they're in it for their own individual growth. And that's okay. That's fine. Is it ideal? No. Would I like to see that change? Yes. Do I think that is changing? Absolutely. And I think that's the best part about what you and I are talking about is it's the community that creates the opportunity. It's the
Yeah.
community that creates the development. When we talk to our guests, and what's the number one thing that gets brought up every single time? It's a hockey community, and we need everybody in it for everyone to be able to succeed. So
Yeah.
my advice to my younger self, work as hard as you can. You've got plenty of time in your life to sleep. Don't worry about it when you're young. I don't mean that by saying don't get rest and recovery. What I do mean though is if you absolutely love this game and you obsess over it, great, go obsess over it. That's exactly what you need to do. But also do what's best for you, do what's best for your fit, do what's best for your family, do what's best for your goals and aspirations. And if you do everything with that morality,
Yep.
you're never going to end up unsuccessful.
For sure. For sure. And that's where our interview. So as I mentioned, we interviewed George Chalos, and George has been involved in the game for many years, and it branches to a story after the interview and I completely forgot. So, like I mentioned, I played with the Los Angeles Kings, and the year it was 06, 07. So it was 07, and I got called up, and I got called up for picture day, right? So everyone's like, "Oh, so you got the proof?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got the proof." And so like I know it's tough here, but I'll post a picture. But I got called up, and at the time, one of the assistant captains was Aaron Miller. And so George Chalos was college roommates with Aaron Miller. And so we were talking about that after the interview. But I'm gonna post that here after this because it's an amazing interview that we had, which talks about so many different things in hockey, and that we continue to talk about is what's needed and how to do things the right way, leveraging the Utah Hockey Club, but also expanding to new areas, and especially here in St. George in southern Utah. It's not a matter of now when is hockey coming. It's a matter of where's it going to go and who's going to be behind it. So,
Absolutely.
right, Tommy, and I think I think Southern Utah, I think St. George has now reached that point where it's not a matter of when, it's a matter of where and then who's behind it. And you've seen Utah your whole life. Like I'm sure you can agree that things are going to happen here pretty quick.
No, absolutely. I think all the right people are getting involved. You're starting to see more Utah Hockey Club memorabilia out there.
Yeah.
Really, they want a part of it. And, you know, when I moved here in 2015, I mean, we didn't even have streetlights in our neighborhood. Like, that's how rural this was considered,
For
right? And you're
sure.
like, oh, okay, then I slow down everything like that. And again, in 10 short years, now you're talking about, well, if Vegas has a professional team and they have an AHL team as well to go along with it, and Salt Lake has a team, you know, 4 hours north, all these people are coming in from the state. We're one of the highest growing populations in the nation. We're one of the highest growing metropolises in the nation as well. Well, what's going to come with that is economic opportunity. And what comes with economic opportunity is expansion into these things. And now you're starting to hear hockey as a part of the conversation. And it wasn't even like that 2 years ago when we got Red Rock Hockey started. Now you look at all the parents showing up to the games. They're wearing their Vegas Golden Knights memorabilia, or they're wearing the Utah Hockey Club, or they're creating T-shirts of the logos of the teams that their kids are playing for. Everyone wants hockey. Everyone like just it's like this hunger that can't go away, and it's contagious. And I love to see it. It means we're building a great foundation, but we can't continue to build without the people in the community, and that's exactly what we're trying to exemplify here.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that too is providing the right education, the right information, and we've been in the game for so long, no matter who you talk to, there's good ones, there's bad ones, and then there's ones you just don't talk about.
Right.
So,
Yep.
um, so that's where, like I said, we want to educate as many people as possible. And I know that there's a huge market right now for high school hockey. And with that, what's the next step? And this is where I highly encourage whoever's listening here to obviously share the video, but talk to high school age kids, to junior age kids, because this is where we come in to support, to be advisors, and to guide families and players in the right direction. But also with the interview we have with George Chalos, just talks about the dynamic of what it takes to be at that level, because there are certain levels. And Tommy, like we talked about, you can be 16 to 20 years old, and there's a difference of 3 junior levels of play. Like, it's crazy, right? So just to go on this real quick, and I'm not going to take away from what George talked about, but here in Utah, we have 2 levels of junior hockey that are currently being played. One is the NCDC, which is the National Collegiate Development Conference. And then there's the USPHL Premier. So everything's under the USPHL. And up north, we have the Ogden Mustangs. We have the Utah Outliers, excuse me, which are playing in the NCDC. And then you have the Vernal Oilers. And of course, down here in Enoch, you have the Iron County Yeti, and they play in the USPHL Premier. So, like I mentioned, there's paths for everyone. There's a direction. Tommy and I are here to help you provide that.
Absolutely.
The thing too is, like you mentioned, is just, I wish someone would have said something to me back then. That's why we're here, because everyone's gonna have a crystal ball. Everyone's gonna have that crystal ball. It's like, well, how do I know what's in that crystal ball? Well, you're not going to know what's in that crystal ball, but what we're going to do is help you ask those questions to prevent you from going back and going, man, I wish I would have had someone tell me that, right? Because we've gone through it. And like I said, so our failures, our sacrifices are now your benefactors.
Right.
So, Tommy, as we leave every episode, okay, before I get to your quote, I do want to leave, as you guys are seeing, I'm wearing my Jog hat. So Jog is jersey, apparel, bags manufacturer, amazing company, US-based company. Scott Whitcomb, Dave Cote own the company. So anyone that needs jerseys, game jerseys, practice jerseys, also apparel, tracksuits, undergarments, workout gear, shorts, t-shirts, and then team bags. And this is where, Tommy, as we talk about being hockey, being uniform, every team wants to look the part. They want to look identical. You guys do it with Red Rock Hockey. That's why every team either was a Utah Hockey Club theme, was a Ducks theme. Like, you have to have that branding, and that's where Jog will put together the jerseys, the packages. So obviously, I'm your contact. We'll have my information up there as well. But Jog Athletics is another sponsor of ours too. So they're providing apparel, which is huge. But Tommy, let's leave us with a quote, buddy. What do we got?
Well, this one's basic, and it's from our boy Herb Brooks. And I love it because every time that I hear it, it just resonates. It calms my brain down for about 10 seconds of just pure solace. And that quote is, "You were all born to be hockey players." If you're listening to this right now, you fell in love with the sport in some way, shape, or form, whether that was playing mini sticks or whether that was you were 10 years old and you laced on a pair of rollerblades for the first time and just picked up a stick and a ball and shot on some garbage cans like me. You were all born to be hockey players because that's what you love to do. And sometimes the best thing that we can do in life is to take a step back from all the stress, all the social media, all the expectations, all the conversations, all the emotions that surround your life. Just go out and play hockey. It solves a lot more issues than you would think. And it's because of good people involved in the game. We like to think that we are helping with that as well. So like Gabe said, if you guys have any questions, always feel free to reach out. You can find us on all of our socials, anything like that. We want to help grow this game. We want to help grow individuals into what people they want to be as adults, and all it takes is one step forward. So
love it. Can't go wrong with a good Herb Brooks quote. So, with that, guys, thanks for watching the Southern Utah Hockey Report. Don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm Gabe Goche, Tommy Rupp. Thanks for watching.
see you at the rink.